It's obviously, Friday night's going to be awesome, USC, Utah. The Saturday games are going to be fantastic, all these conference championship games. But we've had some pretty average weeks in the NFL. Like in college, for the most part, you're getting 2 or 3 behemoth games a week, especially toward the end of the season. That has not been the case in the NFL. Well, that changes this week. And to me, there are 2 just massive games. Obviously, Bengals-Chiefs, which we'll dive into a second. And I'll start with the Dolphins on the road against the Niners. From a football perspective, arguably one of the best, if, depending on situational. I think they're the best red zone offense. Tua's having a fantastic season. Tyreek's an MVP candidate. Their offense is super fast, explosive. It's everything you'd want. We'll see the offensive line. They're missing some guys against the league's best defense. And the Niners, relative to 2022, are by far, to me, the best defense. Like, they're the best. Now, relative to historic units, they're not even the best Niner defense of the last decade. But that doesn't matter. That's irrelevant. All that matters is 2022. So from a football perspective, this elite offense against this elite defense, let's watch it play out. But to me, the most fascinating part about this game, and listen, I guess I like the Niners, but I wouldn't bet on this game. I know that. I do not feel confident of the Niners winning. It's been a roller coaster couple years, and you never know what you're going to get with this team, no matter how many damn good players they have. But I think what's fascinating is from a coaching perspective, and we've talked about it, and I definitely have hammered it home, but it's been a talking point for years about Belichick guys, right? They try to copy Bill Belichick. They try to emulate him. It's like there's only one Bill Belichick. This little curmudgeon who's super educated that knows literally every position, every single play in the history of the league, right? Every single player too. Like no one's ever going to be Bill Belichick. So when you try to copy him and all of his strategies, you're going to fail. And they all do. Every single one of them. And even Josh McDaniels, who was probably the brightest star of the group, is 4-7. And they're celebrating beating Seattle like it was the AFC Championship game. Rightfully so, because they started 2-7. But when you look at Kyle Shanahan's guys, and to me, his true guy was Mike McDaniel. Robert Saleh, who he'd worked with from an assistant coach standpoint, was with him 4 years. Robert Saleh, obviously, his ascension happened because he came to the 49ers. He was a fired linebacker coach from the Jags and transitioned his life to he's having a fantastic season. And if you watch Robert Saleh mic'd up, if you're a Jets fan, I'm sure you've seen it. If you're a football fan, you'd enjoy it. Against the Bears, like 5.5 minutes worth. You would think Robert Saleh was a former NFL player who retired like last year. Just one of the guys going nuts. And remember what made him like really pop in the NFL, Niners 2019 defense was elite, but was his actions going nuts on the sideline. It was like, God damn, this guy's passionate. And Mike McDaniel last year when he got elevated to the offensive coordinator, he started doing these press conferences like, this is the weirdest guy I've ever seen in the NFL. Like there has never been an NFL coach quite like this guy. Ivy League, really out there, quirky, talks different. And like we said with the Belichick guys, be yourself. And I think this works in any industry. I can speak for myself. When I have been most comfortable, whether obviously from a podcasting standpoint, but inside a building, whether it was when I worked in the NFL, when I worked in radio, been in relationships, it gives you the most opportunity to have a successful professional life, relationship, whatever. I think everyone listening to this agrees. When they're at their most comfortable, when they are their most comfortable self, that's when they're their best self. Now, that doesn't mean everyone's going to like you. That doesn't mean you're going to get along with everyone. That's not the way the world works. But you got to be true to yourself in any walk of life. I truly believe that. And it doesn't guarantee you success in any industry that you work in, but to me, it gives you the best opportunity for success. That's why in college football, every guy that's very comfortable in their own skin, those guys are the ones having success. Now, just because you're comfortable in your own skin doesn't mean you're going to win a bunch of games. But look at Lane Kiffin. Remember early on in Lane Kiffin's career, he kind of was a weirdo? And then he's become very comfortable post Nick Saban. And he's just true to himself. He doesn't try to copy Nick Saban. He doesn't try to copy he doesn't try to copy Pete Carroll, who he worked for. He's just Lane Kiffin. And you know what? It works. And I think when you watch Robert Saleh is not trying to copy some other coaches. Now, I'm not saying you don't steal ideas from other guys, but he's Robert Saleh. And it's what put him in position to be a head coach. And to me, Robert Saleh, we have seen Robert Salehs before. To me, Robert Saleh is kind of from the Pete Carroll tree in terms of high energy, just a guy's guy. He's got a little Mike Tomlin in him. He's just a cool cat who everyone likes. High character guy. People love the guy. And it's easy to do that, especially when you're winning. Even though someone with the Jets told me last year when they were having a shitty season, they're like, you know what was really impressed about Robert? Is he was pretty consistent all season long. Like, obviously, you can't jump up and down when you're getting your ass kicked. But he didn't turn into a negative Nancy. He stayed his positive self. And it's clearly bearing out some fruit this year with their team, kicking ass and taking names. Like, you watch the Jets team, it's really good. It's a little harder for a guy like Mike McDaniel, who's just a quirky dude. Watch one of his press conferences. It is unlike a lot of other press conferences. And for those of you that don't know, Mike McDaniel has been with Kyle Shanahan for over a decade. He was once fired by Gary Kubiak because he struggled to get up early on in his career. And when you're like the quality control guy and the head coach is also the offensive coordinator, like he's calling, and I guess Gary Kubiak was a really early morning guy. They couldn't get a hold of the guy. And he was fired. He had to go to the World League. And then he battled alcohol issues when he was with the Atlanta Falcons with Kyle, and they supported him, and he went to rehab. Like, he's got a crazy story. But to me, what makes him the craziest story is like him. He doesn't look like most coaches. He definitely doesn't talk like most coaches. But you know what? He doesn't try to fake it. Like, you watch him mic'd up, he's just kind of a weirdo. But it's him. It's who he actually is. And I think there's a tried and true formula in coaching, just like it is in any leadership position. If you are true to yourself, whether it's weird, whether it's bravado, whatever you have that is truly yourself, you got to stick with it because it gives you a good opportunity to be successful. Now, the main reason Mike and the Dolphins are having a fantastic season and surely headed to the playoffs for the first time, and I don't remember Tony Soprano, the year of the Wildcat in 2008. Is that the last time the Dolphins fans would probably get mad at me? No, we made it in 2013. I don't remember you guys in the playoffs. Like, in the last decade plus, I don't remember turning on Wild Card, Saturday and Sunday and seeing you guys. Like, you guys have been relevant because, sorry, dealing with this cold. Your franchise is always involved in weird stuff, but you don't win a lot of games that matter because you never play in January. Now, you have won 19 games. It's not like McDaniel inherited some terrible team. Like, the team Saleh inherited was much worse than the team McDaniel inherited, but he's done a really good job. And the reason he has is because he's a really good offensive coach, and he's good with offensive skill guys and quarterbacks. It's what Kyle Juszczyk told me years ago. Guys love him. The 40 Debos, the Juszczyks, the Kittles, those guys really like Mike McDaniel. Why? Because he knows football. And ultimately, as a football player, whether it's Robert Saleh or whether it's Mike McDaniel or whether it was Joe Judge, as a player, I don't really care that, you worked for Belichick or you worked for Saban or you worked for Kyle Shanahan. Because it's me and you. You're my coach. I'm playing the game, and we're the Jets, the Lions, the whoever's. So can you help me out? When you tell me to run this route, and I'm a wide receiver, and it's going to work against this coverage, and they run that coverage on third down, and that's what we're going to call, and then it works, I'm going to believe in you. So whether you're an asshole, whether you're a nice guy, whatever, if you can help me be productive and be a good player, you're going to help my family because I'm going to be a good player, and good players get paid, and it's just a trickle-down effect. And that, to me, like you go back to the Belichick guys, maybe some of their messages haven't been totally wrong, but they're viewed as fake, and then maybe it doesn't always work on Sunday. So, because nothing's always going to work. Hell, Belichick and Andy Reid and Sean Payton and Pete Carroll, these guys have made calls that don't work. But when I establish a level of respect and from a human connection, I'm being real, I can live with some mistakes if I know you're going to help me, and two, that I respect and I trust you. And I think that's one thing that Kyle's two guys, the last two guys that have got head coaching jobs, Robert Saleh and Mike McDaniel, players trust them because, like I said, completely different personalities, but very genuine people. And they're having a ton of success. And honestly, it feels like both guys, the Dolphins, are going to make the playoffs. I don't see how the Jets don't. I mean, if Mike White's just solid, it feels like the Jets are a playoff team. And then the Bengal Chief game. If you're on social media, you see a bunch of players are talking shit back to each other. That's cool. Like, you know what? Rivalries matter. And having hatred toward each other as sports fans and as us on the outside consuming this, that matters. We want to think that when we're sitting on our couch screaming up and down, the players and the coaches care as much as we do. And sometimes they care way more, and sometimes clearly they don't care remotely as much as us. Hell, look at the NBA. I saw Sean Payton went on this rant to Coward, actually. He goes on a show on Monday. and he talked about how he knows there's been tanking before in the NFL. And I'm going to call bullshit. Like, no. Hell, the Dolphins, historically, remember, they were tanking 3 years ago, won 3 of their last 5 games. Doug Peterson, tanking week 18 is not tanking. Sam Hinkie tanked for like 4 straight seasons. NBA teams tank in December. Their season ends in May. Like, you don't get, like, tanking and losing in the last game of the season when you have draft position on the line and you're a 2 or 3 win team is good business. Tanking in early December or late November that's what the NFL does not have, and they never have. The nature of the sport, the nature of every player, no guaranteed contracts. They've been very lucky. And what they have carried over college and the pros is there are a lot of rivalries, and everything means a lot, right? Every game, even against bad teams, against good teams, matter. You only get 17 of them. Everyone tries. Now, there are blowouts, but that doesn't, in the NFL, for the most part, our games are relatively close. It's why a big point spread is like 7-8 points. You open the college point spreads, you see 20, 30 all throughout the year. Hell, you see some conference games where the point spread is 20 points. You never see that in the NFL. Honestly, there haven't even been this year that many double-digit point spreads, which, remember the Miami team with Flores when he was supposed to tank and he didn't, which cost him Joe Burrow, no big deal. They had several spreads that were like 17 points, which is unheard of in the NFL. And like when you look at the Ohio State-Michigan game, when they had 17 million people watching, you know why? Because people like John Middlekauff in Scottsdale, Arizona, didn't miss a second. The rivalry, the history, the talent, everything. Like I wasn't going to miss that game. Just like I would imagine many people listening watched it. Why? Because we know how much they care. We know how much it matters. Whether you're a Big Ten guy, whether you went to the schools, or whether you went to Cal Poly or Texas State or FAU, it doesn't matter because you know how much it means. And football, like we've had some great rivalries over the years. To me, the best rivalry was when I was in college and even late in high school, Peyton Manning and Tom Brady. 2 of the best players ever. Their teams played every year, most of the time twice a year. They played each other basically their entire careers. It was awesome. And one thing I think we're starting to get in the AFC, and part of being a rivalry is like you need both teams to win. Like, why was Ohio State and Michigan so highly rated this year? Because Michigan won last year. Like, if Ohio State had kicked Michigan's ass last year, that game wouldn't have mattered as much this year. Even though, obviously, it would have mattered because they were both undefeated, but no one would have thought Michigan could win the game. So for the first time, and I was there, I was like, is Michigan really going to win this game? But I thought they had a chance because of last year. So to get a good rivalry, you need both teams and both sides to win. That's why the Red Sox and Yankees, like, were they really a rivalry? Well, once in 2004, and the Red Sox started winning, it got a lot more interesting. Like, I grew up around Sacramento. Sacramento Kings and the Lakers were not a rivalry. Why? Lakers always won. They always did. Like, the Warriors haven't really had rivalries. They've always, like, them and the Rockets were not a rivalry. They always beat them. Them and the Cavs, you could argue, right? LeBron got them one time. But part of a rivalry is, like, both sides got to have a chance. And one thing that's cool about this Bills-Chiefs thing is, like, now, not for all the marbles, the Chiefs have beat them in the playoffs, but when Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen hopefully play in the second or the conference championship this year, we're going to go into that game, depending on where it is, it's actually irrelevant where it is. Whether it's in Buffalo or in Kansas City, we'd go, either team has a chance to win. And we're going to be glued, and 38 million people are going to watch. Because it's going to be 2 of the best quarterbacks. It's a rivalry. A lot of connections. The 2-star quarterbacks, the coaches, they've worked together. It's fascinating. And to me, we might have an addition to that. Because last year, remember, the Bengals beat them twice. But obviously beat them in the most important game, and honestly, the weirdest second half we've ever seen out of Patrick Mahomes. And then this week, talking a bunch of shit, this game matters. And when it's honestly baseball's, people think it's so slow, it's so boring. Their biggest issue is they play every fucking night. Every single night. And in 2022, every game's on television. So, why do I need to watch in late May or early July or early August? I mean, I might, and I do sometimes, but ultimately, there's another game tomorrow and another game tomorrow. It's like, why are the golf majors so important? There are 4 a year. Tennis, why are the Grand Slams so important? There's only 4 of them, right? Some games mean more. Some tournaments mean more. Why am I, who I don't care at all about soccer, but I love America, patriotic individual, and I like sports. So I'm glued. I'm recording this Thursday afternoon. The World Cup game comes on 8 o'clock Saturday morning. I will be up. I will be locked into that bad boy. Zero chance. Under no circumstances would I miss that game. I'm actually really excited for it. Why? Because it matters. And to me, the Cincinnati and Kansas City game now feels like it matters. We know Kansas City and Buffalo does. And you know who it's really going to matter to? Kansas City, right? Because Cincinnati, who's actually got their swag back, Joe Burrow's just balling, and he's clearly not going away. Like, part of what's cool about ultimately with the Miami and 49er game, it's a one-off. It's a once every 4 years game. So even if they play in the best game of the year, let's just say it somehow tops. Think about the best game of the year, Bills, Minnesota. That was freaking awesome. They won't play again for 4 more years, right? If that had been the Kansas City Buffalo game, or if that had been Kansas City Cincinnati, or that had been 49ers, Rams or whatever, it would be so much more intriguing. And to me, when you get conference rivals with great quarterbacks, it just draws us in. No different. Like, I was watching a little bit last night of flipping channels and all these like Big Ten, ACC college basketball tournaments. And when I was a kid, they were so big in the 90s. College basketball has diminished greatly. And I think it's simply because, like, when I was a kid, guys, star players would stay for a couple years, like in college football. Like, the reason college football is so big is because we know the star players like Bryce Young, Caleb Williams, Will Anderson, Aiden Hutchinson, like, we start viewing them as NFL players while they're in college. In college basketball, it happens so fast and then they're gone. Right? In college football, a guy can start as a true freshman at Alabama, at Ohio State. Like, I knew Nick Bosa was when he was 19. I got to watch him for several years. Or whoever. Insert any sweet player. And college basketball now lacks that. Hell, some guys go to like the G League. It's just not the same. And it's just part of the deal. But Indiana, North Carolina, and the environment was sweet. I was like, God, reminds me like Dean Smith versus Bobby Knight back in the day. Ironically, it's like Mike Woodson, who played for Bobby Knight, and Hubert Davis, who played for Dean Smith. So it had a good feel. Both teams were ranked. And I watched. I don't know a player on either team. I don't even care. But it was like, I can't change this channel. Fucking people are going nuts. The place is packed. It feels like this is for all the marbles. And that's what Kansas City and Cincinnati, and a little bit, I would say Kansas City and Cincinnati feel like a bigger game than Miami and San Francisco, just strictly because the conference. I think the Eagles play the Titans this week. Same deal. It's just, it's not quite the same. And when you get big conference games for teams that aren't in the same division, it's fun. And it's what we want as viewers. I know it's what I want as someone that talks about football. Plus, there's just the storyline in this game is I will be stunned. And I talked about this with Stuckey. The level of edge that Kansas City is going to have. I mean, they were the team that got embarrassed. They were the team with the big lead. They were the team that blew it at the end of the first half. And now Cincinnati, like, ultimately, they got to go to the Super Bowl. It would have been Kansas City's third straight Super Bowl. Even if they win or lose against the Rams, I probably think they win. But how many teams, historically, I'm not Belichick here, go to 3 straight Super Bowls, right? And as long as you win one, you're not the Bills. So you go to 3 straight Super Bowls. That's a really big accomplishment. Early 90s, Cowboys didn't. Pretty sure Walsh Niners never did. Maybe some of the Steeler teams. I don't know. Again, not a football historian like 1990, but it's not an easy feat to do. So I'm really excited for those two.